In this video, we'll go over some practice questions for the PTCE. The questions cover these learning objectives outlined in the medication section. Feel free to pause before I show the answer and leave a comment below if you have any questions. So let's get started. What is the generic name for Strattera? Atomoxetine is the generic name for Strattera. Which of these drugs is used for hypertension? Carvedilol is used for high blood pressure, Norco is a pain medication, aspirin is used for pain, fever, and cardiovascular health, and Lodine, or generic name Metodolac, is an NSAID used for pain, inflammation, and arthritis. What is the brand name for Celebrex? All of these choices are look-alike sound-alike names, so it's easy to get them confused. Celexa is the brand name for citalopram, celecoxib is the generic name for Celebrex, and Zyprexa is the brand name for olanzapine. What is the brand name for mirtazapine? Remeron is the brand name for mirtazapine. Which of these drugs is not used for fungal infections? Metronidazole or Flagyl is used for bacterial infections, not fungal infections. A good way to remember a lot of the antifungal drugs is by recognizing the conazole stem. Which of these drugs is not used for dyslipidemia? Tizanidine is a muscle relaxant. The other drugs are used for high cholesterol. What is the beyond use date for cephalexin suspension after reconstitution? Cephalexin suspension should be used within 14 days after reconstitution and should be refrigerated as well. Which of these drugs is classified as an opioid? Morphine is classified as an opioid, baclofen is a muscle relaxant, doxepin is a tricyclic antidepressant, and gemfibrozil is a fibrate antilipemic. What is the generic name for Vistaril? The generic name for Vistaril is hydroxyzine. Which of these drugs is used for Alzheimer's disease? Memantine or Namenda is used for Alzheimer's disease, which is a condition characterized by memory loss. Benzonatate is used for cough, allopurinol is used for gout or to reduce uric acid concentrations, and Prozac is used mostly for depression. What is Zolpidem used for? Zolpidem, along with Zaloplan and Esopicolone, are known as Z-drugs, and they're used for insomnia or to help with falling asleep. Which of these drugs is not an antibiotic? Spiriva is not an antibiotic. It's an inhaler used for asthma and COPD. Which of these drugs is used for hypertension? Amlodipine or Norvasc is used to treat high blood pressure. Which of these drugs is used for ADHD? Vyvanse is the only choice indicated for ADHD. Here are a few other drugs you'll see often that can be used for ADHD. Which of these drugs is used for angina? Angina is chest pain, which can be treated using nitroglycerin or nitrostat. The ointment formulation for nitroglycerin is also used for anal fissures. What is the brand name for Pramipexole? The brand name for Pramipexole is Mirapex. What is the most common route of administration for triamcinolone? Triamcinolone is most commonly supplied as a topical formulation, but can also be used as a nasal spray and be given as oral tablets in animals. Which of these drugs is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug? Diclofenac is an NSAID that's also supplied as a topical gel that went over the counter in 2020. Its brand name is Voltaren and it's used for pain, inflammation, and arthritis. Which of these drugs should not be taken with grapefruit juice? Zocor or simvastatin, along with other statins, should not be taken with grapefruit juice because grapefruit juice contains furanocoumarins, which interact with the enzymes responsible for statin metabolism. This interaction results in a higher concentration of statins and an increased risk of experiencing the adverse effects of muscle pain and aches or rhabdomyolysis. Which of these drugs is a therapeutic duplication of atorvastatin? Lovastatin and atorvastatin are in the same class and are used for similar indications, so they should not be taken together. What is the generic name for Zoloft? Sertraline is the generic name for Zoloft. All the choices are classified as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, and are used mostly for major depressive disorder and anxiety. Which of these drugs is not used for bacterial infections? Alendronate is a bisphosphonate used for osteoporosis or to maintain bone health and prevent bone loss. Which of these drugs is used for diabetes? Glipizide is used for diabetes. Glipizide, glimepiride, and glyburide belong to a class of drugs known as sulfonylureas and are all used for diabetes. Which of these drugs is used for hypertension? Labetalol is used for treating hypertension and is also one of the first-line antihypertensive agents used during pregnancy. Which of these drugs may result in serotonin syndrome when taken with Ultram? Tramadol is generally indicated for pain, but it is also an inhibitor of the reuptake of norepinephrine and serotonin. Taken in combination with SSRIs results in excess serotonergic activity and can result in an altered mental status and heightened neuromuscular and autonomic activity. What is the brand name for esomeprazole? Nexium is the brand name for esomeprazole. Which of these drugs is not used for depression? Keppra or levetiracetam is used for seizures and not depression. What is the brand name for escitalopram? Lexapro is the brand name for escitalopram. Which of these drugs is not a narrow therapeutic index drug? Narrow therapeutic index drugs have a narrow window between their effective dose and those at which they produce adverse toxic effects. So a small difference in dose or blood concentration may lead to a dramatic dose-dependent therapeutic failure or adverse drug reactions. These adverse drug reactions can be life-threatening, possibly resulting in hospitalization or even death. Topiramate is not an NTI drug. Which of these drugs is used for depression? Bupropion is used for depression. Cyclobenzaprine is a muscle relaxant, clarithromycin is an antibiotic, and Lunesta is used for insomnia. What is an appropriate route of administration for Levemir? Levemir is given subcutaneously. What is the beyond use date for Levemir after opening? Most insulins have a beyond use date of 28 days once in use, but Levemir is an exception with 42 days. Which of these drugs is used for nausea and vomiting? Zofran or ondansetron is used for nausea and vomiting. Sumatriptan is used for migraines, imipramine for depression, and Pepcid for GERD, acid reflux, and indigestion. Which of these is not a brand name for fluticasone? Flovent, Arnuity ellipta, and Flonase have the active ingredient of fluticasone. They differ only in their formulation and delivery. Advair is a combination drug of fluticasone and salmeterol. Which of these drugs should not be taken with potassium supplements? Potassium supplements should not be taken in combination with ACE inhibitors such as enalapril. ACE inhibitors can increase potassium levels, which increase the risk of hyperkalemia when taken with potassium supplements. Which of these drugs is not a proton pump inhibitor? Aripiprazole is an antipsychotic, not a proton pump inhibitor. Aripiprazole is the exception to the prazole stem that is present in all proton pump inhibitors. What temperature should insulin be refrigerated at? Insulin should be refrigerated between 36 and 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Which of these drugs is not used for dyslipidemia? Nystatin is an antifungal agent. The stem for HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors is vastatin and not statin, as shown in the table. Statins are used to treat high cholesterol. What is the generic name for Flomax? The generic name for Flomax is tamsulosin. What is the generic name for Diovan? The generic name for Diovan is valsartan. Which of these drugs is not a muscle relaxant? Oxcarbazepine is an anticonvulsant used for seizures, not a muscle relaxant. Which of these drugs is not a benzodiazepine? Quetiapine or Seroquel is an antipsychotic medication used for bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and major depressive disorder. Also, here's a list of some of the common benzos and their indications. Notice that most benzos have the azalam or azepam stem. Which of these drugs should not be taken with Imdur? Cialis or tadalafil should not be taken with Imdur or isosorbide. Isosorbide is classified as a nitrate, which can cause hypotension. PDE5 inhibitors such as sildenafil and tadalafil also cause hypotension. If both drugs are taken together, there is a significant risk of severe hypotension. Which of these drugs is an antidepressant? Citalopram is an antidepressant. Which of these drugs is not a diuretic? Nifedipine is not a diuretic. It is used for hypertension and angina. Diuretics are used for hypertension and edema or to reduce swelling caused by excess water retention. There are a few different types of diuretics as shown in this table. Which of these drugs is a therapeutic duplication of meloxicam? Estradiol is a hormone, losartan is an angiotensin II receptor blocker used for hypertension, loratadine is an antihistamine used for allergy symptoms, and ibuprofen is an NSAID like meloxicam, so ibuprofen and meloxicam should not be taken together. Which of these drugs should not be taken with St. John's wort? St. John's wort is an inducer of the enzymes involved in the metabolism of statins. This means that St. John's wort accelerates the metabolism of statins, resulting in their diminished efficacy. As a result, statin therapy may not be as effective in controlling dyslipidemia, so St. John's wort should not be taken with Lipitor or atorvastatin. Which of these is not insulin glargine? Brand names for insulin glargine include Basaglar, Lantus, and Toujeo. Humalog is a brand name for insulin Lispro. Toujeo is a more concentrated version of insulin glargine, so smaller volumes of insulin can be injected to reach target goals. What is the generic name for Percocet? The brand name for codeine with acetaminophen is Tylenol number 3 or number 4 depending on the strength of codeine in the formulation. Hydrocodone with acetaminophen is Norco. Hydromorphone is Dilaudid, and oxycodone with acetaminophen is the generic name for Percocet. Which of these drugs is not used for constipation? Meclizine is used for nausea, vomiting, and dizziness associated with motion sickness or vertigo. It is not indicated for constipation. Which of these is not a hazardous drug? Chlorhexidine is not a hazardous drug. Most people know it as over-the-counter Hibiclens, and it can be used as a soap before surgical procedures or sterile compounding, and the diluted form is used as an oral antiseptic mouthwash following dental procedures. What is the brand name for Metoprolol? The brand name for metoprolol succinate is Toprol. Toprol is the extended release form. Metoprolol tartrate is the immediate release form and has the brand name Lopressor. What is the generic name for Viagra? The generic name for Viagra is sildenafil. Which of these drugs is not an antihistamine? Montelukast, or brand name Singular, is a leukotriene receptor antagonist that's also used for asthma and allergic rhinitis like antihistamines, but it acts in a different mechanism to do so. What is the brand name for nitrofurantoin? The brand name for nitrofurantoin is Macrobid. Macrobid is an antibiotic. Which of these is not a brand name for albuterol? Ventolin, ProAir, and Proventil are all brand names for albuterol. Estelin is a brand name for Zelastine, which is a nasal spray or eye drops used for seasonal allergies or allergic rhinitis. Which of these drugs should not be taken with Plavix? Concurrent use of Prilosec or omeprazole with Plavix may result in reduced plasma concentrations of clopidogrel active metabolite and reduced antiplatelet activity. So co-administration of these two drugs should be avoided due to a reduction in clopidogrel clinical efficacy. What is the classification for dexamethasone? Dexamethasone is a steroid used for many different inflammatory and endocrine-related conditions. Which of these drugs is not used for hypertension? Crestor or rosuvastatin is used for dyslipidemia. Which of these drugs is a therapeutic duplication for Pepcid? Pepcid and cimetidine are both histamine 2 blockers, so they have similar indications such as treating GERD. What is the generic name for Flexeril? The generic name for Flexeril is cyclobenzaprine. What are bisphosphonates used for? Bisphosphonates are used for osteoporosis and can be recognized by the dronate stem. Which of these drugs is used for gout? Allopurinol is used for gout, gabapentin and pregabalin are used for seizures and nerve pain, and phentermine is used for weight loss. What is the route of administration for latanoprost? Latanoprost are ophthalmic drops used for the reduction of elevated intraocular pressure in patients with glaucoma or ocular hypertension. Which of these drugs is not a controlled substance? Fentanyl is a C2 drug, testosterone is a C3, and Valium is a C4 drug. Baclofen is not a controlled substance. What is the generic name for Tylenol? Acetaminophen is the generic name for Tylenol. Aspirin's brand name is Ecotrin, Advil is ibuprofen, and Aleve is naproxen. These are all over-the-counter pain relievers. Which of these drugs is not an anticonvulsant? Donepezil is a cholinesterase inhibitor used for Alzheimer's disease. Which of these drugs is a Schedule II drug? Focalin is a Schedule II drug, meaning that it has a high potential for misuse and abuse. What is the brand name for methylprednisolone? The brand name for methylprednisolone is Medrol and is most commonly prescribed as a Medrol dose pack consisting of 21 tablets for a 6-day supply. Which of these drugs is not used for Parkinson's disease? Parkinson's disease is a condition characterized by progressively impaired motor functions. Devalproex or Depakote is the only choice not indicated for Parkinson's disease. Which of these drugs is not a stimulant? Klonopin or clonazepam is not a stimulant. What is the brand name for clopidogrel? The brand name for clopidogrel is Plavix. The generic name Ricardizem is diltiazem, the brand name for fenofibrate is Tricor, and the generic name for Januvia is sitagliptin. Which of these drugs is not used for hypertension? Buspirone is the only choice not used for hypertension. It's used for anxiety. Which of these drugs is not used for schizophrenia? Verapamil is used for hypertension, angina, AFib, and tachycardia prophylaxis. What is loperamide used for? Loperamide is used for diarrhea. Which of these drugs is used for diabetes? Januvia is used for diabetes. What is the beyond use date for augmentin suspension after reconstitution? Augmentin suspension should be used within 10 days after reconstitution and should be refrigerated. What is the brand name for propranolol? The brand name for propranolol is Inderal. The generic name for Pravachol is Pravastatin, Norvasc is amlodipine, and Cozar is losartan. Which of these drugs is a therapeutic duplication of lisinopril? Lisinopril is an angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor. ACE inhibitors can be identified by the pril stem, so quinapril is a therapeutic duplication. Which of these drugs is not used for diabetes? Oxybutynin is not used for diabetes. Oxybutynin is an antimuscarinic agent used for overactive bladder, bladder spasms, and urinary incontinence symptoms. Oxytrol is an OTC formulation of oxybutynin supplied as a transdermal patch. What is the brand name for phenazopyridine? Azo is the brand name for phenazopyridine. Which of these drugs is not used for glaucoma? Hydralazine is used for hypertension, not glaucoma. Which of these drugs is used for viral infections? Acyclovir is used for viral infections. Cephalexin and amoxicillin are used for bacterial infections, and diflucan is used for fungal infections. What is the generic name for Levaquin? The generic name for Levaquin is levofloxacin. Which of these drugs is not a steroid? Imitrex is not a steroid. The tables list a few common steroids and their respective stems. Which of these drugs is not used for neuralgia? Neuralgia is the same as nerve pain. Zetia or ezetimibe is used for high cholesterol, not for treating nerve pain. What is hydroxychloroquine not used for? Current studies have shown no significant difference in clinical outcomes for patients receiving hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of COVID-19. Which of these is not a route of administration for estradiol? Estradiol is not supplied as eye drops, but can be used by transdermal, oral, and vaginal routes. Which of these drugs is not used for PTSD? Requip or Ropinirole is used for Parkinson's disease and restless leg syndrome. What is the brand name for oseltamivir? The brand name for oseltamivir is Tamiflu. Tamiflu is used to reduce the duration and severity of flu symptoms. Which of these drugs is used for bacterial infections? Cephalexin is used for bacterial infections. Which of these drugs should not be taken with prazosin? Prazosin is an antihypertensive alpha blocker. Terazosin is also an antihypertensive alpha blocker, so they should not be taken together. What is amiodarone used for? Amiodarone is used for various arrhythmias and the maintenance of normal sinus rhythm. However, amiodarone is also associated with several potentially significant and sometimes fatal adverse effects. Which of these drugs is a therapeutic duplication of tenormin? Tenormin, or atenolol, is a selective beta blocker, the same as metoprolol, so they should not be used concurrently. Which of these drugs is used for pain? Oxycodone is a pain medication. Which of these drugs have a major interaction with alcohol? So when a person consumes alcohol, the body breaks it down in two steps. First, it breaks down alcohol into acetaldehyde. Next, the body reduces acetaldehyde to acetate. It does this with an enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase. Metronidazole blocks the effects of aldehyde dehydrogenase, resulting in toxic levels of acetaldehyde to build up in the bloodstream. Acetaldehyde buildup is responsible for the unwanted effects of alcohol, such as mental impairment. So concurrent use of metronidazole in alcohol or alcohol-containing mixtures such as mouthwash or some cough medications should be avoided. What is the brand name for insulin aspart? The brand name for insulin aspart is Novolog. What is the brand name for insulin Lispro? The brand name for insulin Lispro is Humalog. What is clindamycin used for? Clindamycin is used for bacterial infections. What is the brand name for buprenorphine with naloxone? Suboxone is the brand name, and it's used for opioid dependence. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Also, check out my other videos if you found this content helpful.